All right, Baltimore City Council Ways and Means Committee. We're back for fiscal year 2022 budget hearings, specifically City Council Ordinance 21-0080, Ordinance of Estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. Eric Costello, Councilman for the 11th District, Chair of the committee. I'm joined in chambers by Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District, member of the committee, as well as Councilwoman Felicia Porter, 10th District, who's going to be chairing this hearing. In addition, virtually we have, well, not virtually, he's in his office, but we have Council President Nick Mosby. We have Councilman Ryan Dorsey, 3rd District, member of the committee. Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer, 5th District, member of the committee. That's all we have on council members. Representing Mayor Brandon Scott is Natasha Mehew and Nina Themlis. Representing Council President Nick Mosby is Matt Stegman and Nikki Thompson. Staff to the committee is Marguerite Curran. I want to take a moment to recognize City Administrator Chris Shorter, who's joining us, as well as Deputy Mayor of Neighborhood and Economic Development, Ted Carter, who's in chambers with us. We are going to be doing Mayor's Office of Employment Development. We have the Executive Director, Jason Perkins Cohen, who's in here with us today in chambers. This session is going to go until 2:30 p.m. Jason, I know you have a presentation with a couple slides. I'm going to turn it over to you to run through those slides. I think most of us on the council are very familiar with the just absolutely outstanding work that you're doing. So we're going to ask you to keep it pretty brief, 6-7 minutes. And then the gavel is going to go over to Councilwoman Porter, who's going to be chairing the hearing. Jason, if you could take it away, please.
Thank you, Chairman Costello and members of the council. Again, just for the record, my name is Jason Perkins Cohen. I'm the director of the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. I do want to just briefly introduce the team with us today. We have in chambers Terry Parker, who's our CFO, and Chantrice Cooper McCoy, who's our executive assistant. With us virtually today from MOED, we have Mackenzie Garvin, who's our chief of staff, Ernest Dorsey, who's the head of youth programming, Craig Lewis, the head of adult programming, Patty Morphy, who heads our data team, and David Hagens, who's our budget director. So following Councilman Costello's request, I will keep it short. I do want to just make a couple of overarching comments before jumping into the slides. I know that you all have been hearing budget briefings all week long, and like every agency has been impacted by COVID. MOED maybe more than almost any other agency in terms of our work, and that's for a few reasons. First of all, we're a direct service agency, which means that we are helping residents directly. They come into our centers, we're place-based, which means that when the shutdown occurred, all of those centers had to close down for health and safety reasons. The second is, though we can initiate virtual services, those that we help are typically the most impacted by the digital divide. We have a center dedicated to serving returning citizens. We have another center dedicated to serving residents on public assistance, and centers dedicated to opportunity youth. And those, again, not always, but often are our most vulnerable populations and least likely to have access. So even while we're ready to provide services virtually, they may not be able to access that. And finally, again, as an employment agency, we all know one of the most dramatic impacts of COVID has been the never before seen in our lifetime dramatic increase in unemployment. It went literally from 4.7 in the city, 4.7% to 11.6%. That is a shock to our system. Again, it's not we all know it's not a Baltimore specific issue like we've never seen before. And so not only did that require more people who needed services, but our ability to place residents when so many businesses were closed was obviously compromised. So with that, let me jump into the slides. Again, I know you want me to be brief, so I will be. The first is 791, which is the partnership we have with BCPS for the school that Oh, thank you. I forgot. One second, please. All good? Okay. 791 is our partnership with the school system. We operate a school out of our YO Center, a Youth Opportunity Center that serves young adults that are overage and undercredited. You'll see this on a few slides. The output slide, which is lower than target. Most of the output slides, and we'll go through them one by one, whether they're higher or lower than the target, are really not in the control of MOED. This is a partnership with BCPS, and they send us residents, or in this case, young residents, to serve. So the number is below target, but you can see that, at least from the budget book, the percentage with the plan is 82%, which is very close to where we've been in the past. And again, the percentage that we were able to place in a job was 62%, lower than we've had in the past, but still noticeable and significant. Next, we have 792. Oh, there we go. It is advancing. Okay. That's illustrating a contract we have with the Department of Social Services. I sort of mentioned this in my opening. It is not a center that's open to the public. It only serves residents who they refer us who are on public assistance, typically temporary cash assistance. And when COVID hit, so two things were happening. Just before COVID hit, the economy was strong, and for various reasons, the number of people who were on TCA, or temporary cash assistance, was lower, so we were getting fewer referrals. And then second, when the pandemic did hit, the federal government and the state government followed suit, removed the requirement for adults on temporary cash assistance to have required work activities, which meant our referrals went to zero. So that is why we are below the target. Again, historically, we have been at target or very close to it. And it also accounts for the low percentage that were retained in jobs. Remember, if the pandemic hit in March and we're measuring 8 and 16-week retention, and they were often let go, that means those that we placed in the fall were let go as well. And that's obviously awful, and something that we're working to address with them now. Moving to 793, employment enhancement services for Baltimore residents. Here you can see that the number of residents that we're serving that acquired the skills, and also the number that we actually helped to obtain jobs. If you think about losing a third of the year, you can see that we were right on target to meet our targets until the pandemic hit, and still helping 6,400 and 1,600 move into employment is significant. Again, this doesn't measure all of the work that we do. This is just for this specific service number, so only residents who are offered services through this service. Keeping it rolling. The administration, there's no outcome measures associated with that. That supports a number of staff people on the administrative side of the house. 795 is the workforce services for Baltimore residents. This number, as opposed to some of the other ones, really ballooned. This is, and again, as I mentioned in the opening, this is another one in which the output is not totally within our control. And this is not a number that you want to see be very large. This reflects our services and our partnership with the state to help residents to apply for and receive unemployment insurance benefits. And that's why it ballooned the way it did. And as you can see, the percentage of customers who received at least one service and rated it as good or excellent is very strong. Continuing to move. This is 796, our services for returning citizens. Again, there's a theme through many of these measures that would tell you the same, which is through the first 8 months of the year, we were on target to meet our goals. And when the pandemic hit and the Reentry Center was shut down, when we stopped receiving referrals from the Division of Parole and Probation for health and safety reasons, we were not able to meet the targets. And so again, similar to the last slide, very strong ratings from those we serve, which is something that we take seriously and hold in the highest regard. Keeping it going, 797 is our services for out-of-school youth. This supports our YO centers, our youth opportunity centers. As you know, we have one on the east side that we contract out. We have one on the west side in Sandtown that we run ourselves. This measure, we were able to reach the target. This is an intensive program that provides case management, wraparound supports, literacy assistance, certainly job placement, and much more. Again, strong, great that we were able to meet the target. We are the first to recognize that there are many, many more young adults that need this service that we don't have the resources to support. The participation rate, again, a bit down, but again, you would expect that when the center, like all of our centers, was closed for the better part of 4 months of the year. Even still, factoring that in, the rate is actually quite high. YouthWorks, we all know and love YouthWorks, service number 798. It's our summer jobs program in a normal year, which this was not, and this coming is not either. It's a 5-week program that that young adults between the ages of 14 to 21 work 5 hours a day, 5 days a week for 5 weeks, so 125 hours. This can get a little confusing. YouthWorks, because it's, of course, our fiscal year starts on July 1. This does not reflect last summer. It reflects the summer before. That's because most of YouthWorks is in that fiscal year. So this actual number of 8651 is actually the summer of 2019. Obviously, we finished the summer of 2020. I can tell you that we were, unlike many cities across the country, including New York, we were able to have a summer jobs program virtually that served more than 5,000 young adults, but that's not reflected here. That'll be a surprise for next year. Again, the cost for YouthWorks, the great majority of the cost is in wages that we pay to young adults. So again, in a typical year, paying $8 million in wages to young adults is an incredibly important thing that the city does. We're all used to it here in Baltimore City, but I can tell you, we are, depending on how you count it, one of the largest, perhaps as high as the second largest program per capita in the country. It's a choice that we make as a city. Not every city makes that choice. It's the right choice for Baltimore. It's important to give young people opportunity, help them build skills, and advance towards their eventual career. And finally, again, trying to keep it short, service number 800 reflects federal funding that we receive. In this case, it's for young adults. We contract this program out. We run an RFP. Organizations around the country submit their proposals, and we have an independent panel review those proposals to select the providers. Again, another one that was compromised by the pandemic, although not too far off of our target of 166 served with federal resources. Most of the really actually all of the programs that were running when the pandemic hit in March of 2000 had to shut down, 2020 had to shut down. And so we had to work with them to find other ways to make sure that we were serving our young adults. And again, despite those challenges, a high percentage of hit or earned their occupational credential, which we're very proud of. So that is a very, very quick recap of our service numbers. I know that you all have questions, and I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Director Perkins-Cohen. I just want to commend you and your staff post COVID-19, getting Baltimore residents back to work. We're going to start with our first round of questions. City Council President Mosby, do you have any questions, sir? City Council President Mosby, if you're speaking, you're on mute, sir. Do you have any questions? Okay, we're going to come back to City Council President. Now we're going to go to Councilman Robert Stokes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cohen, again, thank your staff for not just what happened with COVID, but all the good work that y'all been doing before that. My question is, I'm working with school system and BCCC. I know you're aware of it. We were about to open up Merville Emerson Westside Skills Center in the evenings for apprenticeship training. I'm still looking forward to that. My question is, we do the youth works in the summertime. I think I said maybe just about a year ago. How can your office now make those young people prepared so when they come into some summer work, that they prepared how to work in the office, that kind of, because a lot of times we give our young people jobs and they clean it up. I don't like that because I think that's not a skill. They can learn how to clean up in the community, but how can your office make that youth works program work in the summer so they're prepared? Like if they come into City Hall and work for a lot of the council people, they'll be able to know how office work, how to work in the office, that piece. I know we talked about it before. I know it's kind of hard, but have you ever looked back at that to get them prepared for summer work? So when they walk into an office, they don't just get 5 weeks and now they learning, but they already have an idea of where they going at and what type of work they're gonna be doing, but they already kind of trained already.
Yeah, that's a great and really important question, Councilman Stokes. And a couple things I would raise, and you're completely right that one is we want to make sure that we are partnering with the school system and placing young adults in their field of interest, and to the extent that they're CTE students or career and technical education students, we want to make sure that we're helping them advance by placing them again in that field. And we also don't really want it to just be about a 5-week job, right? If we're only doing 5 weeks, where the program may be 5 weeks, we need to again think of the whole, in this case, young person, and that they're advancing through their young career. So a couple things that we're doing. One is we are literally partnering with the school system to identify CTE young people through our Youth Works program to make sure that we're doing what you said to place them in their field of interest. Again, this summer is a tough year because many businesses are not open for in-person work. Having said that, we've identified quite a few young people, and they are sort of our first go-to when we have an employer that's looking to hire in their field. Second, I would talk about the kind of ways that we want to think about Youth Works, which is where you're really heading, is to give you an example would be two. One is we have the YH2O program with the Department of Public Works, where we work with young people starting in January, preparing them for the jobs in the water industry, not cleaning up or anything like that. They actually get a mentor in the public or private sector. They go on field trips to see treatment plants, et cetera, and really learn about the industry. We use our Youth Works dollars to place them in the summer. And then the percentage of those young adults that complete YH2O that get placed is well over 90%. And we can do this not just in the public sector, but we can do it over and over and over again in a much bigger and better way. And we're looking to do that. And then the last thing I would mention is just this week, we actually, our team from our business services team visited Local 24. We're working with them to help fill their apprenticeship that's going to start in the fall. But at the same time, they've indicated that they have at least 5 opportunities for young adults. So we're going to, again, use young adults, youth workers who are particularly interested in that kind of work to get placements at a union. What a tremendous kickstart to their career to have this opportunity this summer. So we just found out about that this week, and we're going to look to place them next week.
And one more comment. Ernest Dorsey, is Mr. Dorsey on the line? Well, I remember when I got my first summer job, Ernest Dorsey was working at Dunbar. So I guess I would not be sitting here until I got my first summer job to learn how to work in the office. So Ernest Dorsey, thank you very much for that opportunity, along with former delegate Hattie Harrison, who used to run that center down there. So I remember, that's why I kind of see how it happened for me, and I like to see this happen for our young folks instead of giving them 5 weeks and they have no clue actually what they walked into. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Councilman Stokes. We're going to circle back to City Council President Nick Mosby. Sir, are you on the line for any questions? Okay, we're going to come back to him. I have a few questions, Director Perkins Cohen. My first question has to do with workforce centers. We know that community centers are throughout our city, and that currently they're not functioning at the highest level of potential that I believe that they could be. Can you speak to how or what are some strategies that MOED can do to reimagine our community centers into multimodal centers that includes workforce development?
Thanks, Councilman Porter. I appreciate the question, and I think access, and I think where you're heading is, we got to make sure that all parts of our city have access to services. Obviously, for us, it's employment services and related employment services, but there's a lot of other services as well. A couple things. One is just, our just for the record, our 2 adult centers and our youth opportunity center is now open to the public by appointment only. I know that's not really where your question is, but I just wanted to say it so that folks heard it and know it, so they can schedule appointments and meet with staff in person. What we're starting to do, and what we want to do in a much bigger way to address your question is, we recognize we need to meet residents where they are. We can't wait for them to come to us at our centers. We have established 3 community job hubs. These are neighborhood organizations that provide other services to residents, and we don't charge, there's no money involved here. We send staff to that site, and they work out of that site, again, in a non-pandemic time. They work out of that site and provide employment services to all residents that are seeking assistance. We want to do that in a bigger way. I think we can do that, not only to establish additional job hubs, and I should be clear, like, this is a really low-cost way to make services more accessible, because the only cost of it, again, is a staff person with a laptop, right? So it's can't get much cheaper than that. So in addition to establishing more hubs where we go to them every day, we want to have mobile staff who can go to different places in a day or different places in a week. Again, we really want to, as valuable as the centers are, and it's incredibly important that we maintain them, we really need to find other ways to connecting to residents. If this pandemic has shown that more than ever.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate, I appreciate the immediate strategies. But speaking long term, when we're talking about how to engage our residents, I think it's more important, like you said, to meet people where they are, particularly with different challenges such as linguistics, such as the technology divide. We need to begin to reduce those barriers so that people can get back to work. And that actually leads into my second question related to youth employment. So we know that youth unemployment is a significant concern in our city. We are seeing more and more young people being heads of household at age 16 years of age, supporting their family. Can you speak to strategies for engagement outside of youth works for youth age 16 to 25 to hold and maintain gainful employment?
Thank you also for that question. And to your point, we have, as I mentioned, 2 youth opportunity centers, and in a given year, they have a caseload in the 800 to 900 range. The services are intensive. You heard Councilman Stokes acknowledge Ernest Dorsey. I want to acknowledge him as well, both for YouthWorks and for the YO program. It's under his leadership. And those provide a full array of services. The challenge is in terms of what they provide, it's that they're not able to serve as many residents, young residents, as who need it. And we're trying to come up with different strategies to do that. So a couple of quick strategies that I'll mention. One is we established a program called Grads to Careers, in which, again, partners with the school system. The data around young adults leaving high school and not going to college or going straight to work is alarming. It's roughly 25% of the graduating class in a given year. And a research was done, not by us, that found that on average 6 years later, they were earning less than $15,000. So we don't want to wait for them to come to our youth opportunity centers or our one-stops or reentry center. We know that they're at high risk of becoming disengaged, disconnected, and every kind of negative outcome there is. So Grads to Careers works with the school system where, again, in a non-pandemic year, and we did this virtually this year, but in a non-pandemic year, we're actually literally going into the school system. We've established occupational training programs that they can go immediately into with no break from school if they so choose. And again, these are often programs that they were not aware of. They were not serving young adults. And the early results of that are really encouraging, that indicate that they are getting on, those that we're serving are getting on a career pathway. That's exciting. I mentioned that there's roughly 1,000 young people who fit that criteria in a given year, and we're serving with our partners, the school system and Baltimore's Promise, more or less a quarter of them. So again, there's a lot more work to be done, and we would love to work with you and the council about how to have the resources to provide those services.
And I appreciate that, Director Perkins Cohen. I know that my colleague, Councilman Conway in the 4th District, he often talks about the transition of youth, and also Councilman Stokes as well, are transitioning or the identification of youth for city, city positions, the numerous amount of city positions that are in need for our city. So this can be a conduit when we're talking about like a pilot program, making sure that our performance metrics actually match up with what we're trying to do. So not just the 5-week workforce development program that i.e. is Youth Works. I'm talking about long-lasting careers that not only teach soft skills, they teach technical assistance and technical skills, not just cleaning and greening in our city, but industries that will actually be needed in the future to lead Baltimore to the next level. I will turn back to Council President Mosby. I'm gonna see if you have any other questions, sir. All right, Councilman Stokes, do you have any more questions, sir?
Yes, real quick. Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Cohen, the ENIPRET has this employment ban, and I don't see it working a whole lot. I think the pandemic taught the city, not just people working from home, but how to use a van in communities when people can't come to where you are. Have you ever looked at your budget in terms of Mayor's Office of Employment Development to have their own employment van? And that van will have somebody to deal with mental health, somebody to deal with substance abuse, because we talk about helping our young people or adults, but if we're not talking about all the underlying issues that they have when they go home, if we're not addressing that, they'll never walk through a door where we said, give them a job. Give them a job is easy to say, but there's a whole lot of other things that go with it. So are we going to be using the ENIPRET employment library during this pandemic? Actually, it really helped out, I'm sure, your office and everybody else. How now we cannot wait for somebody to come to your office. We have to go, what you said, go to where they are. So have you looked at using that, and probably with Director Short on here, maybe find some funding so Mayor's Office of Employment Development can have their own mobile van that they can move around throughout the whole Baltimore City?
Councilman Stokes, I think that's a good point. We do partner with a mobile workforce unit that the Pratt Library runs. And I think it is useful in the way that you described. I would say to you, and again, we're starting to see, or we've seen the fruits of partnering with strong community organizations. I think one of the things I'd like about the hubs, and I think it's important for our community, is they need to know where to find us. So we got to be a little careful that we're not, you want to be mobile and you want to meet people where they are, but you don't want to be the good humor man driving down the road, ringing the bell, right? You want people to know, okay, on Monday at 11 a.m., I can go to my brother's keeper and I will find an employment service specialist, happens to be from MOED, there to serve me, right? And I think that consistency is really important. We have been talking with Mayor Scott, CAO Shorter, Deputy Mayor Carter, around some of the ways that we can increase access to these services, and I'm looking forward to ways that we might be able to present to you in the future.
And real quick, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've seen when that mobile van started, I seen them sitting in parts of my district. I didn't know they were there, and they were just sitting there. We got a schedule. We can't just show up and ride around and say, you need some training, you need a job, and I agree with you. I'm glad you looking at it that way, because I've seen it twice, and it was just sitting there. Nobody was utilizing it because nobody knew it was coming. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Councilman Stokes. I'm going to open it up to other members of the council. We have Councilman Chris Burnett. Do you have any questions, sir?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's good to see you, Director Cohen. The first question I had was around Service 796, workforce services for ex-offenders. So what I couldn't really parse out from the book, or at least it wasn't entirely clear. So it looks like there were, at least one of the outputs were, there were about, in the last fiscal year, around 1,200 that received services, but I couldn't really tell if that 278 were the only ones that got employment. I guess, could you help us sort of piece together that program, and if that's accurate, what is needed to be able to connect with the rest of the folks that obviously came through seeking assistance but may not have had the outcome that they were looking for?
Yes, thanks for asking that question, and let me try and clarify. I think one of the things that is important for all of us to realize with these services is that they're driven essentially by a particular funding stream. So this particular funding stream only funds a piece of the Northwest Career Center, the Reentry Center. I think it's 793 only funds what's happening at the Workforce Reception Center. So it doesn't necessarily reflect people, returning citizens who were serving anywhere else, right? At our East Side Center, at our Bush Street location, at our youth opportunity centers, at the WRC, et cetera. So that's really important to recognize. And again, it's just driven by where the money's coming from. And it's predominantly from a grant from DPSES, the Department of Public Safety. You are correct that the number 278 is a relatively low number. Again, the referrals essentially discontinued, and this reflects not everyone who comes to the Northwest Career Center or the Reentry Center is actually looking for employment immediately. Sometimes they're looking, let's say, for an ID or to address a child support order modification that needs to be addressed given where they are. So we do need to figure out a way, obviously with the shutdown of employment in March, these numbers are much lower than we would like them to be, or certainly. But we also have to figure out a way to open up other avenues for returning citizens so that they can get to work quickly. And again, talking a lot with City Hall leadership about ways that we might do that in this coming year.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. And even just for the budget book, if we could add a little bit more, and I guess it's more of a BBMR thing, a little bit more context, so it is clear that this isn't the full scope across the whole effort to employ returning citizens. Because I think when we talk about sort of the larger needs of the city from a violence prevention perspective, we know that this particular population, if aren't reached early and quickly with the resources they need, employment and other sort of those wraparound services, there's the potential for going back and being reincarcerated, and so trying to break that cycle. And I know you all are doing the work, so that's why I was like, this doesn't seem accurate. So that's why I wanted to ask that question. So yeah, I think in future budget books it may be helpful for us to get the full picture of all the different locations and how they fit together. The second question I had was 798, and my apologies if because I was a little bit late jumping on during your presentation on YouthWorks, but if you could or maybe reiterate what you covered as far as like I generally always want to know how many have applied, how many were accepted and placements, that kind of thing. I guess what's the picture looking like this summer? I know it's going to be challenging.
Yeah. So for the summer that's coming ahead, obviously none of that is reflected in the budget books or the slides, but we're close enough where we know. we were able to help nearly 6,300 young adults complete the YouthWorks process. Last year we were at 5,000, so it's a greater than 20% jump from last year. Again, for those that have gone through the YouthWorks process or have a child or a relative or friend who's gone through it, in the past we've always done this in person, and we had to do this virtually this year. And we worked, again, the population that we're serving, we prioritize young adults who are engaged with the juvenile justice system, young adults who are receiving or whose families receive public assistance, or who are in the foster care system. And again, so we're targeting individuals who may be most impacted by the digital divide. And so we tried to work creatively. We worked with the Digital Equity Coalition. We actually, through a grant, employed 4 IT specialists who were dedicated to helping young workers and their families complete the process online. And then we went so far, again, under Ernest's direction, as to to find ways to meet young people and their families safely. So we were meeting young people in parking lots outside of our building to help complete the application so that they could be eligible to work. The best news is that under Mayor Scott, 100% of the young people that completed their verification are going to be employed this summer. That's not a commitment that we've been able to make for a number of years. A lot of the jobs are virtual. Again, we all know why, for health and safety reasons. We will have over 250 employers, virtual or in person, hosting or paying young people this summer, and in a huge variety of ways. We have a number of other initiatives that I'll just mention as part of YouthWorks. So we really want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for young people to lead. And so just 2 things. One thing is we're going to have what we were referring to as young money mentors. So instead of old guys like myself trying to teach financial education, we're actually hiring young adults who are going through a training program with a national organization. They're going to get employed before YouthWorks even starts and get paid. And then they're going to be the money mentor. So they're going to actually virtually appear into different sites and offer financial coaching. Youth to youth is powerful, and we're excited about that. We're also going to have a group of youth analysts who are going to come and do a survey all on their own. We're not going to tell them what to survey. They're going to survey youth, again, talking to youth, telling us about what our program needs to be, what to preserve and what to improve upon. And then the last is we're going to actually have a weekly show with young leaders who are just going to be hosting. Young adults can tune in, and we're really excited to offer that opportunity as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm excited to be a virtual site this summer, and looking forward to continuing to support the program. Thank you, Madam Chair. That was all the questions I had for this agency.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Burnett. I'd like to share that we've been joined by Councilman Zeke Cohen and Vice Chair Sharon Green Middleton. I'll start to see if, Madam Vice Chair, if you have any questions for Moet, ma'am.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jason. Always good to see you. First off, just want to thank you for, in a pretty tough spot, making the pivot with YouthWorks. And, I know that some cities really struggled around youth employment programs when COVID happened. And I know that wasn't easy for us either, but at least we did it, or at least we did some version of it. On that note, excited to work with you potentially on some upcoming digital related work, but wanted to see if you could articulate just a little bit of what you are thinking in terms of the opportunity with the ARPA funds. We know that this is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity for Baltimore, and especially for MOED, for programs that are really centered on either young people or folks generally who have a hard time finding employment. If you could talk a little bit about how you see the use of ARPA funds really sort of being catalytic in MOED's work.
Thanks for that question, Councilman Cohen. I had the opportunity to be with Mayor Scott this morning, and obviously there's a process by which we will be going through and submitting our proposals, and I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but what I can say is we received an award from the state, which is called the Relief Act, and to both to your concerns and Councilwoman Porter and Councilman Stokes about getting, and Councilman Burnett, it's all about getting people to work, right? Especially in this time. And so what we've used that grant to do is create something called Hire Up, which is essentially establishing service corps opportunities. We're literally actively recruiting with the Department of Rec and Parks, DPW, Department of Public Works as well. And it's getting people a job as quickly as we can. When you think back to the greatest employment crisis, I don't think any of us were alive during, obviously, but the Great Depression, what did they do? They built a service corps, put people to work building roads and bridges and dams. And we did something with the health department called Baltimore, and under Mayor Scott, called Baltimore Health Corps, where we helped 300 residents become community health workers. That has been reviewed by the Rockefeller Foundation. It's been reviewed with briefs by the federal government. And we can do that over and over again. We don't, that's terrific. We want to maintain that. But now we can create other service corps opportunities, whether it's for young people, helping to talk to young people around digital equity and literacy, or financial empowerment, whether it's getting our city cleaner, whether it's making our city more inclusive. There are a host of opportunities to turn resources and positions within the city government to a dual purpose, where we're providing a public good and we're helping a person get a wage, and then navigating them to a permanent position. And we're excited to be doing that with Hire Up, and we're having conversations with Mayor Scott and his leadership team about whether this is something to expand with ARPA funds or not.
Great. Appreciate that. Really excited about Hire Up. Couldn't agree more that, this moment calls for the kind of energy that we saw during the Great Depression and afterward with FDR. And I think the more we can do locally to meet the real needs of our city while also getting that win-win of putting young people to work, I think is really exciting. And again, thanks for the work that you do.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Councilman Cohen. My last question, Director Perkins-Cohen, has to do with transportation. Can you speak to the strategies? Well, transportation is a huge issue with regard to workforce development all throughout the city. Can you speak to some of the ways you're working with our transportation agencies, whether it be at the local level, at the state level, so that we can reduce those barriers in order to get people to work?
I completely agree with you in many ways. In some ways it's the most challenging, right? Because it's not, I don't know that you can have a small program to start to address it. We are trying to be creative in how we approach transportation. So one of those ways is, for example, is to partner with a nonprofit called Vehicles for Change. And they will provide a vehicle under certain situations for residents who are completing a training program. We're exploring. The city embarked on something early on in the pandemic in terms of the ways it helped residents access food. And developing, and some of that was beyond the food part of it. It was the transportation piece of how residents could get somewhere. We know we have food deserts all over our city. We also have employment deserts. And so whether we can learn from that pilot program, we literally have a conversation happening with representatives next week about a way in which we can use our resources to pay or subsidize rides for a period of time, at least until that allows people to get a job, start a job, until they get that first paycheck, at least, if not a little bit longer, so that once it happens, you can reduce the subsidy and they can pay their own way. But the great challenge that I know that is that for so many residents, they can't get started. And if we can create this creative transportation initiative, I think that might help address it.
No, thank you for that question. I encourage if we can explore different public-private partnerships with some of the small and minority based transportation companies. Particular in Baltimore City, we have a number that are working in Baltimore City that are small businesses in Baltimore City that I'm sure would lend their services to you all. So I just wanted to share that we've now been joined by Councilwoman Odette Ramos of the 14th District, and also Councilman Ryan Dorsey from the 3rd District as well. I'll start with Councilman Dorsey. Do you have any questions, sir?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I mean, Jason, following up on that, can we just get some bikes to some people?
Happy to explore that with you and take a look at it. I think it's certainly not out of the question.
Yeah, I mean, probably you can buy somebody a bike for what you end up spending on a handful of automotive rides to and from a place. Certainly, that's something that we want to encourage people to feel, empowered in as a mode of transportation that can lead to job access for folks, especially as the city continues to invest in making it safer for people. We want more and more people across the entire employment spectrum to be confident in their ability to get around, and I would say in a really in such a self-empowering kind of way. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dorsey. Councilwoman Ramos, do you have any questions, ma'am?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I had a child pickup issue, so I apologize that I'm not there and also not in front of my computer. I had a question about one of the major barriers to employment is also housing. Mr. Perkins Cohen, can you talk a little bit about that? I think you and I talked a little bit about that too. Like, what are you seeing in some of the folks that you're trying to, get, jobs? If they're housing insecure, it's also more challenging to get jobs.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm glad, because I didn't cover a piece of our work that's not necessarily aligned with a specific service number. But at the start of this calendar year in January, we wanted to think about our centers a little bit differently, whether they're virtual or in person, and think of them as access points. So, while this hearing, of course, understandably is focused on what the city agency is doing, we are well aware that we're not, there's a whole host of services that residents need that we may not be the best candidate to provide. On the other hand, there may be outside organizations that are providing services to residents, and we may be the best organizations to provide. So we got to build a true workforce system. And so we began to think of our centers and pilot our centers as what we're calling access points. And we have a tool that we call Unite Us, and we've got a number of, in addition to using it within the agency, we're actually using it outside of the agency. So as residents come into a center in person or virtually, we can then do an assessment of their full needs and find out, well, what is it, what do you really need? Yes, a job, and maybe a job is it, but there may be a broader need as well. And the thing that we can say after the first few months of this is the number one need that came up was housing. And so as an agency, as an employment agency, we have to work with we can certainly work within government, but again, we are starting to work with our non-government partners where we can make a referral. Again, we're all on the same, not everyone yet, but we're building this to be on the same tool where we make a referral of Jason who needs housing to a neighborhood organization that can provide those services. The agency, the community-based organization receives it online. They can acknowledge the receipt of that service, and we can again sort of partner together in a seamless way without having the resident have to transfer or transit all over the city for different services to address that. So we're really just scratching the surface of that. I think it's really powerful information, and one that will require us to work differently with our partners. And again, partners are referring people to us who, otherwise wouldn't be able to receive our services because they're at a neighborhood organization. We talked about meeting people where they are earlier in this hearing. So more to come on that, but I think the first step is developing this tool so we can really work together.
Thank you. And I'm sure you're doing the data collection as well to be able to get us to allow us as the council and also citywide all of the various services that people are asking for, because that's going to impact, how we do this work, moving forward. So I'm glad that you're working on that, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ramos. We also were joined by the chair of the committee, Chair Eric Costello. Do you have any questions, sir?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm good. And again, I just want to reiterate, Jason, I appreciate all the great work that you all are doing every day to help employ folks in the city. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're going to circle back around to Councilman Stokes.
First of all, Mr. Cohen, I know Councilman Dorsey said, you got any bikes? You got any cars? Because everybody don't drive bicycles. So if you give away cars, let me know. I got some people in my community that's interested too. But I actually wanted to talk about, you talk about getting, Councilwoman Miller talk about getting our young people involved in how to open a bank account, all that, and we talking about our young people. Have you looked at maybe talking to some of the banks and having our young people start working there during the summer, during the winter? And the reason why I say that, we know we not only have a food desert, we have a bank desert. So in my district, we getting ready to do a mobile banking soon with a bank here in Baltimore. So I wanted to make sure how we can maybe talk to that bank and use some of our young people to be on that mobile banking unit, and they can kind of learn while they're there when they're going to take charge of teaching the class. And also there's another gentleman, Sharice Small. He teaches that also. And I was at the 29th Street Center about a year and a half ago before the pandemic. He actually had 300 young people in there teaching them how to open up a bank account, how to save the money, how to, that information. So I look forward to that mobile unit, putting it out there, but making sure that whoever my contacts is, I can give it to you so our young people can now start working in the bank and understanding more about how to open up a bank account and actually working in the bank and how to save their money. So just wanted to kind of share that with you.
I look forward to working with you on it.
Thank you so much, Councilman Stokes. We were now joined by Councilman Antonio Glover. So, sir, just in the last 5 minutes, wanted to see if you had any questions for Director Perkins Cohen.
I don't. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will actually turn it back over to Mr. Okay, sorry about that.
Vice Chair Porter, this is Councilwoman.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes,
That's okay. I just had two. One, I guess, is a statement, and one question for Moet. How are you, Mr. Director?
I'm terrific, and always good to see you. You're my councilwoman, so especially good.
Thank you for everything that you continue to do with supplying jobs for our young people in this city. Two things. The first thing is I had put in a resolution basically a little while back called just kind of an informational resolution calling the school system and just having an update on financial literacy. And Councilman Stokes had, just kind of brought this memory back to me. So I still haven't given up, and I still want to work on a course for 11th and 12th graders in our high schools, basically an elective in financial literacy. I think it's crucial. I know that 7 counties are on this path. Prince George's County just was allotted or found $40 million and are hiring 40 teachers for a course. So they see the importance of this, and it's a dire need for our young people in our city as well. And just kind of hoping that you somehow can, I know that you kind of understand the importance of that And if, this would be just another good avenue to have our seniors prepared for the work world or the college world when, they graduate. I'd like you to comment on that. And then, but first, I just want to, we had the labor commissioner with us and also human resources. And you also know my passion for apprenticeship. And I think the labor commissioner announced that now will be moved directly under her. Have you gotten any information on that, or did you know about that?
I've heard something about it, but I would certainly defer to the labor commissioner. She would be the best authority. But
Okay.
I share.
I just want no slight against you or your department, but I'm trying to I'd like to get things back in order so it can get the real deep attention, because you are involved in so many things, and no slight on your department, but anything that could help move that along. I just wanted to mention that.
Well, starting with that, the apprenticeship was not under MOED, but I'm happy to, if it's moved into the labor commissioner, that would be terrific. I would just note that with some state resources, we are creating the position of apprenticeship coordinator in my office, not to work within city government, to work with the private sector to help them initiate additional apprenticeships, because we know how important that is. And on
Awesome.
financial literacy, I would just say, sorry I wasn't able to make the hearing. I know that Mackenzie Garvin, our chief of staff, was there. I watched the hearing later. Certainly happy to. I certainly know how important it is, and would love to work with the school system.
Thank you. Yeah, we have that open. That hearing is still open for some follow-up that needed to happen. And we're going to have another hearing on it soon. But we have our deputy finance director, Aaron, definitely on board, because he is like a living product of with financial literacy, being in a high school and having that as his focus. So he did come testify personally, and that speaks volumes right there. So again, thank you for the things that you do for our young people, and I want to continue to work with you as much as I can.
Thank you so much, Madam Vice Chair. I'm actually going to close out this particular hearing now. We're going to transition into our next one. So I will, we're going to close it out and be in recess for till 2:35.